feeling in the industry that a lot of poaching will happen when the new banks come into existence. So I request Mr. Ashwini to give his initial comments on HR issues which will evolve in days to come.
Actually, the HR issue comes about because of the fact that you have a Nachiket More committee report. If you try to think about why this report was at all, had to be considered and brought forth for implementation, you look back, the Indian banking scenario as such has been one where the scheduled commercial banks have more or less failed to cover most of the population in terms of the banking outreach, which is why you had scams like the Sharda scam, etc. And the Nachiket More committee therefore specifically looked at about 4 or 5 areas which they felt needed to be focused on to address precisely these warts which were happening in the system despite the wonderful regulatory oversight that we had from the Reserve Bank of India. One was an ease in the system for payment and remittances. The other was an ease in the access to one's savings. Now, if you know how difficult it is for, say, a hawker to go and open a savings bank account. One is he is asked straight away for a KYC with a proof of address and all that. That poor guy is not really able to provide that, which is what drove him to the likes of these chit funds, etc., where he has landed his lost a lot of his savings. So that was one issue which needed to be addressed. The other issue was also the fact that the small businesses and the marginal farmers did not have access to credit as easily as would have been there for the other segments of the population. The third was obviously, as Varsha also mentioned, the need for, particularly based on our experience of the commercial banks getting into infrastructure lending, the need for also having certain niche banks to look at, wholesale banks as they call them, to look at infrastructure financing. And at the same time, amongst all these, was the fact that the redressal system that we had for consumer grievances was actually not really serving the purpose it was required to. And while the banking ombudsman, etc., were there, but you can imagine, if you are trying to get a large unbanked population to come into the banking arena, how is it that you also provide them with a grievance mechanism? So this is another one of those grievance redressal mechanisms that they had suggested as a unified agency which is there in every district. It's still to take off. But these were the 4 or 5 areas where they gave this entire thrust. And post liberalization also, if you remember, right up to the the creation of the IDFC Bank and the Bandhan Bank, RBI had been giving licenses only for universal banks. And how is it then that these niche areas get taken care of, and particularly to ensure that priority sector lending does get the focus, they in fact widened the definition also to ensure that all the segments which need the priority in terms of credit are identified, and at the same time provide access to banking to as many people as possible, which is why you have the advent of the small finance banks and the payment banks. If you look at the structure of the payment banks and the type of people who had applied for the licenses, most of them are those entities who have also an access to the mobile telephony. In fact, State Bank of India itself has gone into a JV with Reliance Jio, and that is one of the reasons that they wanted to ensure that these payment banks, while they do tend to reduce the systemic risk in the banking sector because they are not able to do any commercial lending, at the same time they are able to ensure their viability by driving down the transaction cost through the use of telephony. And for the small finance banks, the idea was that at least 75% of their credit should actually go to the priority sector, with about 50% of that loan portfolio consisting of loans which are below 25 lakhs. So this is the basis on which the RBI and the Government of India decided that this segment of the population which has been bereft of the benefits of the banking system for so long needed to be addressed and needed to be also brought into the banking system, because also the underlying fact was that wherever there is an increase in the banking outreach, all those economies have actually seen an uptick in the rate of growth of those economies, and those are sustained upticks in the rates of growth. So based on that, I think the overall emphasis on this has been very, very well placed. But at the same time, what is happening is we are seeing a huge, massive disruption which is happening in the banking arena. And you have, apart from the fact that these differentiated banks, as we like to call them, will get regulated by the Reserve Bank of India, there are a whole lot of fintech companies like Paytm and others who are coming into the space of this payment business, as well as providing wallet services, etc. So with all that happening, obviously on the existing banks there is a tremendous pressure on the resources that they have, because of the experience that the staff members there have. They are obviously very fertile hunting ground for these new entities, as well as for the fact that these fintech companies would also be looking for people who are aware of what banking is, and at the same time are able to use technology to disrupt the entire scenario which is there for the existing players. And this is where the existing scheduled commercial banks are now required to pull up their socks, get their act together, and in fact recognize the fact that there is going to be a definite change in the way banking is going to be done, and therefore they need to not only reskill their staff, they also need to relook at how they are going to attract the required type of talent. We had earlier, like even today, SBI goes primarily for clerical recruitments as well as for probationary officers directly from the market. But there is now an increasing emphasis, even as I was leaving the bank retiring, on getting specialists to look at certain functions, not only on the technology front, but in marketing, in wealth management, in other areas. We were picking up people on contract basis to make sure that we remain relevant in the changes which are happening in the. So these are the sort of things which are now our banks are grappling with, and at the same time, I think the opportunities which come for scheduled commercial banks out of the advent of payment banks is because of the fact that there is no lending which can be done. The idea is that you can always have a connect, and you have a whole lot of customers who are available through the payment bank system, who can be, whose credit needs can be addressed. So this is something which strikes an opportunity, as well as there is a tremendous pressure on the banks to ensure that they get their act together, they have the requisite technology as well as the manpower to take care of the rapidity with which these changes are about to happen in the marketplace. So I'll leave you with these words. I think a lot has already been covered by Varsha quite extensively. But yes, the advent of differentiated banks is a very positive for the economy. Yes, there is a lack of available talent to meet the requirements which are there in the entire economy in terms of the number of people who are available to handle the specialized banking services which will be required for this segment. As well as also, yes, there is a huge amount of opportunities for the existing players in sort of networking on those niche areas which still need to be covered by the differentiated banks, which is an opportunity for a collaborative thrust. And at the same time, with the fintech companies also, and you would have seen State Bank also doing a part of it, you cannot, strike a competition with somebody who's playing a game differently. And these are all fintech companies which are outside the purview of the central bank supervision. So if at all there has to be a complementarity in the what the banking services offer is and what these e-commerce and these other agencies are providing. So there again there is an opportunity on how do we sort of collaborate with them and make sure that there is an income stream which keeps coming the way of the commercial banks. So these are the sort of opportunities as well as the sort of challenges which are there before all of us. I just thought I'll highlight the major issues and maybe during the course of the panel discussion we'll wait for your questions also. Thank you very much.